another video on strawberry jam. However, this one's going to be the final one this year because the strawberries coming to about the end of the season and they're starting to get a little bit rough. So I've learned quite a lot about strawberry jam this year, and this one video is going to be how to turn like not particularly good strawberries, or any strawberries that you've got actually. So they can be quite good ones, but I've got some strawberries that are a bit rough, and turning some cheap strawberry jam into a really luxurious jam to kind of like make it kind of quite spectacular, really. And also it'll just kind of like round off what I've learned throughout the year with making, well, the season making strawberry jam. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the cheap strawberry jam as a base. So that's actually going to be the jammy part of the jam. And then we're going to enrich it with whole strawberries, not whole strawberries, because some of these have been cut in half. So there's about 700 grams worth of strawberries in here and 100 grams worth of sugar. We're going to cook them in the oven and just poach them slightly in the oven. Now, I won't put that foil on yet. We're going to do them in the oven because we don't want to, if we were to put them in a pan and cook them, we'd break the strawberries down. We don't want to do that. We don't want to boil them or move them around in the pan too much because it's going to break them up. We want to keep them kind of relatively whole. Best way to do that is in a tray with some sugar on, covered and in the oven. So about 150 degrees for about an hour ish, depending on the strawberries and depending on the size of them. So cover on here like that. It's just a cooking them in the oven. It's just a gentle way of doing it. So 150 degrees and then in the oven. So and that's it. And what will happen is the sugar will draw out some of the liquid from the strawberries without damaging them, because we want to draw some of the liquid out, otherwise this isn't going to work properly. But you'll see in about an hour's time when I pull these out of the oven what's happened. Some of the liquid will come out mixed in with the sugar, and we'll be left with the whole strawberries still, which will, which is what we want. The strawberries are cooked and softened, so what we need to do now is to drain off the liquid into a pan and reduce that liquid to concentrate the flavour and the sugar, and it'll thicken it up as well, like that. I'm not bothered about getting a spoon ever prepared and all that, so we'll put a light underneath it. So what we need to do is we need to drive off some of that moisture by boiling it and reducing it, which will evaporate off liquid, and we'll be left with the sugar and the strawberry flavour. So, and then we're going to add the cheap strawberry jam to that liquid, boil it up so it goes nice and thick, and then we're going to add the strawberries to that, and then we'll probably have to repeat the process, but you'll see what I'm doing. So it's easier to reduce that liquid in that state than it is to add the jam now, because that'll mean it'll thicken up and it'll take longer to cook, whereas all we're really doing is just evaporating off a little bit of liquid. It's just a quicker way of doing it, and it means it's not going to spurt out jam everywhere. So it's just a little bit easier just to do it this way, but not boiling too hard, because otherwise we don't want to burn the outsides of the pan, because the gas will come up the sides of the pan and burn the outside of the pan, so we don't want to do that. So it's just a hard simmer for about 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. Juice is reduced down to about a third of originally what it was. So now cheap strawberry jam into it, and then we're going to boil this and reduce it down to get rid of as much liquid as possible, because the strawberries are going to leach out some liquid into the jam. So the more we reduce it down, the less we'll have to reduce the next time. So up to a gentle boil, and then reduce it again to drive off as much moisture, and we kind of want to be in the stage of not burning the jam, and we don't want it to kind of like start caramelizing all that, but we just kind of want to get it to a stage where we've got evaporated off as much liquid as possible, and it goes back to being the consistency of that jam that came out of there. So Boiling it will get rid of those lumps, it'll be fine, so it'll start to bubble, and then we'll show you what it's going to be like at the next stage. Right, so as you can see, the way it's bubbling, that's about as thick and reduced as it's going to get. So heat off for a minute. Try my hands, because they always get sticky. So then, strawberries gently in. There is some juice that's going in, but that's fine. I'm not too bothered about that. Juice in. We're going to have to reduce that juice again, but that'll be fine. So heat back on, and then yes it is. Move that around gently. We don't want to break up the strawberries. We want to keep them as whole as possible. So now, what we're really doing here is just the strawberries have cooled. So they might have got a little bit of yeast or bacteria landed on them, so we just need to put them back into the hot jam, jelly, if you look from different parts of the world, just to sterilise it. Now the strawberries have lost a little bit of colour when we cook them, but that won't be noticeable when we've got the finished jam. So as soon as it's come up to a simmer, and we know that any kind of bacteria or yeast will have been killed, we can put the lid on and leave it overnight. And what's going to happen is that the sugar in the jam will draw out more moisture from the strawberries, which will thin down the jam. It's not what we're wanting a thicker jam. So, but we've got to draw out that excess moisture from the strawberries because we want them to sit in the jam and not float to the top of the jam. So swirl it around, shake it backwards and forwards. That'll be fine. Turn it off. Scrape all those bits off there. So that's nice, and you can see how thick that jam is on there. So that can go in there. That'll be fine. Lid on. And leave it overnight. No, actually, yes, no, lid on. And then it's a sealed environment. And we'll leave that overnight. I'm going to have a look at it in the morning. So, it's set overnight. Well, it hasn't set overnight, but as you can see, it's gone liquid. So that's gone liquid because of the water that's come out of the strawberries. So what we need to do is we need to strain out the strawberries, reduce that jam down again, which will thicken it up, evaporate off the excess water, and then add the strawberries back to it, and then we'll have our jam, and then it'll kind of no more water will come out of the strawberries, and then it'll set kind of pretty good. So I think we'll just be able to pick those out. So I'll pick them out, reduce it down. I'm going to taste it. Taste it now. I think it's going to add a bit. It's going to need a bit of lemon, just a bit of sharpness. Yeah, it's going to need half a lemon in that. So I'll pick those out, reduce it down, and then we'll get back to, I'll show you how it needs to be bubbling to be at the right kind of consistency. Right, you can see how it's bubbling. It's going to be really thick as that. So, fruit back in, gently, and then I'll get that in as well. Put that bit of juice in as well, and then we just need to heat up the fruit just to kind of kill any kind of yeast or bacteria that's landed on it while it's being cold. But we just need to kind of, it's just on the outside, so just give it a bit of taste. Just press through if it needs a bit more lemon juice. No, that's fine. That half lemon juice just added enough acidity to it, and then we've got it's a lovely colour. You can't really tell that the strawberries lost that initial bit of colour when we first cook them. So as soon as this gas is on, yes, the gas is on. So as soon as it reboils into a clean, sterilised jar, and then I've got a lid that I've sterilised as well. I've just done it with boiling water. I'm not going to be too fastidious, so just slightly out of the way. Scrape as much jam out as possible because we've worked for it. I don't want to waste it. Oh, this seems a lot easier than my other faffy methods. So I'll scrape that in there. Right, then that off there. Lid on, and then we'll let that cool, and then we'll have a look at it when it's set. Let's have a look. Good sign. Look at that. Look at that. There you go. And that's how you turn cheap jam into a really luxurious jam. So it's got the whole strawberries in it. It tastes really good, and it's a winner. That's delicious. It's just not as thick as normal jam. It's got a little bit of looseness to it, but flavour really makes up for it. But there you go. How to turn cheap jam into a really expensive jam. Well, expensive because the strawberries I bought were really expensive. But anyway.